Good morning. Happy Halloweenish. All right. Amazon, give us a flash briefing, would you?
Jamie, here's the latest from your flash briefing.
Pump up
In
the
NPR
jam.
News.
Pump it up, pump it up, pump.
Live from NPR
Oh
News
my
in Washington,
gosh,
I'm
you
Corbett
loud.
Coleman. Starting
Right.
this hour, the
Hi,
U.S. Supreme
Cobra.
Court hears arguments in
Thanks.
2 cases challenging race-based admissions
Well.
policies in higher education.
What a way to start
NPR's
the
Nina
morning.
Totenberg reports.
A conservative group, Students for Fair Admissions, sued 2 elite universities, Harvard and the University of North Carolina, contending that because race
Really?
may be one of the factors considered in admission decisions, the schools are unconstitutionally discriminating based on race. The schools replied that there are plenty of students who have high enough test
suppose it's
scores and
possible.
grades to qualify for admission, and that in putting together a student body that is demographically diverse, schools need not ignore a candidate's race any more than they do his or her home state,
Harvard,
national
though,
origin,
you gotta have some
family
credentials
background,
to get
or
in there.
special
So,
achievements. Nina
I don't know.
Totenberg, NPR News, Washington.
Former President Donald Trump's
Isn't that
family
weird?
business, the
Lucky
Trump
Charms
Organization,
hot
goes
cocoa.
on criminal
I
trial
don't
today in
know.
New York.
That's
2 Trump
crazy.
entities are accused of tax evasion. Trump himself is not charged, but insists there was no wrongdoing. A suspect will be formally charged today in several counts in the attack on Paul Pelosi, the husband of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. San Francisco authorities say among the charges is attempted murder. Paul Pelosi was hit with a hammer last Friday. He was hospitalized for skull surgery
hammer?
and suffered injuries to his hands and arms. The
Thought
winner
y'all
of
said he
Brazil's
was
presidential
uninjured.
election is left-wing challenger Luiz Inácio Lula da
they
Silva.
lied.
He narrowly defeated incumbent right-wing President Jair Bolsonaro by a little more than 1% of the vote. Bolsonaro has not conceded the election, but NPR's Carrie Kahn tells us Da Silva joined his supporters in the streets of Sao Paulo last night.
Taking
He
it to
outlined
the
what he will
street.
do in his presidency. This will be his 3rd. He said he will end hunger, zero tolerance
Oh,
for deforestation
end hunger.
in the
Right,
Amazon,
bold
and
words.
most of all, he told the crowd there that he will restore democracy to Brazil.
NPR's Carrie Kahn reporting. Stocks opened lower this
Below
morning
that.
as investors await new action from the Federal Reserve this week to combat inflation. NPR's Scott Horsley reports
Combat
the Dow Jones
inflation. What, are we
Industrial
gonna use
Average
a sword
slipped
or a
about
gun? How
230
we doing
points
this?
in early
Grenade?
trading.
I think we use
Inflation in
rocket
the
launcher.
Eurozone hit a new high this month, with prices up 10.7% from a year ago. That's even higher than inflation in the U.S. But prices in this country are also climbing much faster than the Federal Reserve would like. The central bank's expected to
They're
raise interest
causing
rates by
it.
another
They love
3/4
it.
of a percentage point on Wednesday. Fed Chairman Jerome
increase
Powell
the
holds a
interest
news
rates.
conference
Oh,
that
no
afternoon,
problem.
and markets will be listening for any guidance on how much higher rates are likely to climb in December and early next year. Stocks were mixed in Asia overnight, up in Japan, but down in China. Factory activity in China unexpectedly declined for the 10th month in a row. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
Unexpectedly.
On Wall Street,
10th
the
month
Dow
in a row,
is
but it
down
was unexpected, yeah.
215 points. This is
Oh,
NPR.
God.
State media in Iran say the Iranian government plans to put about 1,000 people on public trial over recent anti-government protests. Demonstrations have been going on for about 6 weeks following the death of a young woman in the custody of Iran's morality police. Tehran has been working to quash dissenters in one of the biggest challenges to the Iranian regime in years.
Is that like squash,
Officials in
but with
western
a
India
K
say
or a
at least
Q?
132 people have died in the collapse of a pedestrian bridge. Victims plunged into the river below. Sushmita Patak reports India's military is conducting search and rescue efforts.
Footage from the tragedy shows people trying to swim to the riverbanks or clinging to the green netting of the bridge.
jumping
Officials estimate there were about 400 people on or around the bridge when it broke off on Sunday evening.
I ain't
Many
gonna lie, I'd
women,
probably
children,
just jump
and
at that
elderly
point.
are among the victims. The suspension footbridge is in Morbi in the western state of Gujarat and is a popular local tourist spot. It was built in the 19th century by the British and had been recently
bridge is
renovated.
coming, the
An
bridge is
investigation is now underway into how it snapped just days after reopening. For NPR News, I'm Sushmita Pathak in Meerut, India.
Officials in South Korea say at least 154 people died in a crowded crush of people out celebrating Halloween last Saturday. The U.S. Embassy says 2
Halloween
Americans
last
were
Saturday?
killed
Come
among
on.
people from other nations. South Korean authorities are investigating reports that there was no crowd control.
Halloween is on
South
Monday,
Korean officials
tomorrow.
have also declared a week of mourning.
People-
I'm Corbett Coleman, NPR News from Washington.
Hi, I'm Daniel Alarcon, host of NPR's Spanish language podcast, Radio Ambulante. This season,
Amazon.
Superman flies.
Skip. Don't care for your commercial.
In NASA news, NASA will host a media teleconference at 12 p.m. EDT Thursday, November 3rd, to discuss the status of its Artemis I
November
flight test that
3rd.
will launch the Space Launch System (SLS) rocket from
Status
NASA's
is,
Kennedy
we
Space
launched
Center in
it.
Florida. The uncrewed mission will send the Orion spacecraft beyond the Moon and back to Earth before future missions with crew.
It's on the way to the
NASA and
moon.
commercial
It's
cargo
gonna come
provider
back to
Northrop
Earth.
Grumman are targeting
They were gonna add
5:50
crew
a.m.
members next
EST, Sunday, November 6th, for launch of the company's 18th resupply mission to the International Space Station. NASA released the results of its second agency-wide economic impact report on Thursday, demonstrating